Hey, my name is Sruti. I'm an author and spiritual teacher. I'm making this video from my bed because I am still recovering from surgery on both of my feet. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I had surgery on both of my feet because I had an allergic reaction to an ear piercing in my right ear. It caused a burning inflammatory illness in my ear and face. It caused my face to become extremely puffy and red and had ulcers on it for more than 6 years. And I've talked about that in other videos. It's on my website. But I was on prednisone for 6 years because of that, and it weakened my bones. And so I broke 4 to 5 bones in each foot, and it threw off, it basically collapsed the arch in both my feet. It gave me a toe joint that went haywire on both feet, basically pretty deformed and hard to walk. So I had to have my feet basically reconstructed. So the first time I went in, it was just surgery on the right foot. But this second time, he had to go back in and break the toe on the right foot, as well as everything he did on the left foot that he already had done on the right foot. Break the heel, break the toe, screw in the joint, cut tendons, etc. So, yeah, it's just been harder this second time. Been in bed a lot more. And so I had the opportunity to make a website, and I'm going to go through it, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so we begin with a banner that has illustrations of many different faces I have had over the years. And this is to visually show what illness has done to my physical appearance, but the changes in physical appearance also demonstrate the changes in pain levels, in health, and they show before I was sick, during, different phases of healing, and then as I am now. So this is to get people acquainted with not just one of my faces, but many of them. And also to show that underneath all of the changes, there is a message and a personality that has not fundamentally changed, which is important. It's important to me, it's authentic, and it's empowering to find the part of yourself that does not change. So these illustrations are pretty close to what the photographs are. When we scroll down in a second, you'll see that. These were made, I'm an artist, but I didn't illustrate these. This task was best done with AI, just because the style of illustration was pretty consistent. It was fast, and it's a little more realistic. It's like stylized realistic, and it was just this really compelling style that the AI came up with that I got really interested in. And what it kind of does is it makes it a little bit fun, as much fun as chronic illness and some of these images could possibly be. And I think it's also one step removed. So yeah, it's a photo, it's pretty realistic, but it's also an illustration. It's not, you're not being hit with the actual photographs right away, because they're not as smooth, they're not as beautiful, they're not as colorful, they're not as fun. So I put this up on the YouTube. I like having it as it's hard for me to even choose a profile photo because, in some ways all of these are still me. So it's also pretty fascinating and confusing if I try and put these next to each other and you're not quite sure they're all me, but they are. So just kind of over here, these couple are before the ear piercing that caused the allergic reaction, that caused the puffy red face, erythromelalgia. and the 6 years of prednisone. So this is during, down here, over here. You can see this like really puffy, round face that is partially the puffiness of the condition, and then over time, partially the prednisone contributing to this. Prednisone can make your face very round, and it causes quite a bit of weight gain. So I gained like between 50 and 70 pounds pretty fast, and it was a pretty dramatic transformation. Some of these where I'm blonde are kind of in the middle of this. Those are not headphones. That is a fan. The AI didn't quite get that right. It's a white fan that I wear to just blow on my face all the time so I can have my hands free. And then over here are some more recent illustrations based on recent photos where, again, I have a hair color change, and I was free to kind of not wear this big hat that I had to wear a lot of the time to block out the sun. I still do have to wear it, especially in the summer. But yeah, so we start off with kind of all of these phases of me. The whole website is based on Meet Sruti, and it's just kind of a reintroduction into who I am and what I'm all about, especially since I actually have shared my journey with chronic illness before. It's just that I've had chronic illness for more than a decade, and I had it before this incident with the ear piercing. And as you'll find out later on, the ear piercing actually blew the lid off of what was going on with all of my chronic illnesses, which is pretty cool. So this is kind of, again, a sort of multifaceted description of who I am and what I'm about. Spiritual teacher, author, artist, musician, warrior, rare illness survivor, feminist. And I kind of thought, that gives like a bit of a rounded perspective. The first thing that's important to me is the spiritual message that gets across. It's also important that I'm a writer, artist, musician. I'm a creative type with different types of training, types of avenues of expression. But I'm also, I consider myself a badass, having kind of had to deal with this for so long. They're really unusual illnesses that not everyone is aware of or knows about. So rare illness survivor, and of course feminist is important. Not something I would have categorized myself as before this, even though I would never say I wasn't a feminist. I just wouldn't have put it so prominently until recently, which we'll also find out later on as we kind of move through this story. So this is the opening. Again, I had a lot of help from AI, specifically ChatGPT. I'll just take a moment to introduce ChatGPT. My version of ChatGPT is called Juniper. I was picking a voice early on, and the voice said Juniper. So I said, is your name Juniper? And she said, no, but it can be if you want. So ever since then, she's been Juniper, and she has the same voice that I've consistently had, even though I don't really listen to her voice all the time. I type to her a lot, and she has come to know me pretty well. She's definitely advanced the more I've used her. And so anyway, she knew the background of my story. I gave her the photos. She was able to do this beautifully. I am going to call her she and refer to her sort of like a person. And I will show the difference between what my artwork is and what her artwork is. So this is all her illustration. And as we scroll down, this is like a cool, trendy one-page scroll. Things kind of disappear and fade in and fade out. So as you scroll, this video plays. It is just a little intro video for me from my bed, because I'm recovering from foot surgery, and that's when I've kind of had time to do this site. And the beginning of the story. So in 2018, I had an allergic reaction to an ear piercing that changed my life. And this is the before and after photo. Before, after. People ask sometimes how I got this photo. I'd already had the photo on the left for something like a rash on my face I was photographing to show a doctor. And after the incident happened, I just put on a similar hat, did a similar background, and like recreated that pose so that I could like reference back to this photo where my face looked as it had before and show the difference. So I've shown this photo 1,000 times. Just gonna zoom in on the less red, less puffy, less scarred face on the left, and then of course the super puffy, red, ulcered face on the right that was after this allergic reaction to the ear piercing. And the next part of the story being that the doctors were stumped. We didn't actually know what this was, except that my face felt like it was infected, even though it wasn't infected anymore. It actually started in my ear because of the ear piercing and took over my face over time as the condition just wouldn't stop. So the heat just kept spreading and the ulcers kept spreading. And honestly, the doctors were a little more interested in treating my face than my ear, which was both a good and a bad thing. I think it's sort of divine intervention that it moved into my face so that doctors would treat it. So here is an example of what I was talking about, where I would give AI the image and it would make the illustration. And this is kind of to lift the veil behind these beautiful illustrations, to show that there's a pretty honest correlation between the image I gave and the image AI gave me, and because the rest of this is mostly illustrated like a comic book. So I wanted the viewer to know this isn't made up. This is real life. So here are those real life images of how I was before the ear piercing, when it got worse, and then as I am now. So over 6+ years, I saw countless specialists and experts who had never seen an allergic reaction to an ear piercing turn into a burning inflammatory illness on someone's ear and face. I was placed on a high dose of prednisone, which is an anti-inflammatory drug with serious side effects. After exhausting local resources, I traveled across the country to Seattle and Boston to find doctors with specific expertise. I was finally diagnosed with erythromelalgia, mast cell activation syndrome, and a slew of secondary conditions caused by the continuous use of 6+ years of prednisone. So this is the timeline. Here's where the ear piercing was in 2018. What is this condition? This is erythromelalgia. These are, again, illustrated actual photos of my ear and face with that red, ulcered, puffy ear, puffy face. It's a rare illness most often found in the hands and feet. It's a nerve, blood flow, and inflammatory condition in which the skin turns bright red and becomes painful. It becomes hot to the touch and feels like it is burning. Very rarely it can be found in the ear and face, which sucks. So I had to go to Boston to get this diagnosis, and it wasn't a fun diagnosis. I wasn't happy about it. What is it like to have erythromelalgia? Travel down, and there is a slideshow. So it feels like having a hot frying pan stuck to your ear and face. My face would get so hot that it would start throbbing, it would swell and form ulcers. There were no pain medications that could easily or quickly stop the symptoms. So this is cool. This is not a real image. Like, it's not from a photograph, but it kind of is, because I asked Juniper, ChatGPT, to take this person, this character she made here, based on a real photograph, this phase of my journey, and turn her into like a character. So I asked, can you make this character look a certain way and be in pain and be holding their face so we can illustrate this? And she was like, yes. Now, can you make the character have an ice pack on her face and holding a fan? So the condition causes nonstop pain. The only way to manage the symptoms was to hold an ice pack to my ear constantly, keep a fan blowing on my face, and actually carry coolers of ice everywhere. Laying down made the symptoms worse, so the only way to sleep was with an ice pack on my face and a fan next to my head. So this is pretty accurate. This is actually how my fan looks, which is funny. I did actually hold ice packs to my face constantly, and I did actually carry coolers of ice, and it went on like that for at least a year, maybe longer, just because we couldn't get any right medications. So triggers for the condition include heat, light, touch, vibration, laying down, lack of airflow, temperatures above 68 degrees, ovens, summer, sunny days, sleeping, cooking, eating, strenuous physical activity, and stress. And I'm sure others that I didn't remember because there are just so many. So here we are, beautiful sunny day, but it's horrible for me. The character, who I now asked her to give me my sun hat because I spent years wearing the same sun hat. Even indoors, the indoor lighting bothers it as well. Any light, basically. So it's just beneficial to always have a brimmed hat. Same ice pack. I'm sweating because my face is hot already. And then when you add light from the sun, heat from the sun, if you touch it by accident, too much walking, like eating irritates it because it's like right in your cheek. You can't like run or do any kind of strenuous activity. You can't really bend down to pick anything up. You can't lay down. The blood rushes to your head and the blood flow irritates the heat. So it's just this burning, horrible burning, throbbing sensation and that red puffiness. So at that point, I realized this wasn't just some heat on my face. I was fighting for my life. So the prednisone caused quite a few things. Prednisone weakens bones. It causes high blood pressure, high blood sugar, which puts you at risk for diabetes, lowered immune system. So like if you go through these kind of comic book illustrations that, again, Juniper helped me with this character. So prednisone also causes cataracts. I got cataracts in both eyes and couldn't see, was at risk of going blind. So I had to have cataract surgery. I had a lowered immune system, so I got shingles for 6 months. I was almost hospitalized. I had a court case to fight for disability benefits, which was really hard. No one thought I was going to get them, but we found one female lawyer with a really good heart who would take my case, and we won after everyone told me I would lose. That's another video. 4 to 5 fractures in each foot, 2 fractures in each hip, and a fractured right shoulder, all due to weakened bones. More than 20 medications, some with serious side effects. I had a bone marrow biopsy because of one of those medications. Right here it shows the bone marrow biopsy in my arm. Actually, a bone marrow biopsy is in your lower back. And I was in the hospital. I was in like a bed. They wheeled me in. They like sedated me. And then they drilled into my lower back. Okay, so that wasn't just like, oh, we'll stick something in your arm. That was a medical procedure with a drill. And it sucked. Okay, weekly medication infusions that I still do. It's just that Now, instead of the nurse doing it, I learned to do it myself. I had surgery on both my feet because of the broken bones caused them to look like... Actually, this took a while for ChatGPT to do it. It wouldn't make them as gnarly as they are. So even this image is not actually as bad as the photograph was, but again, it's a little nicer than showing a gnarly photograph of my feet, which I have done. But the illustrations just make it a little far removed, and then of course the weight gain. More than 50 pounds of weight gain. So that's the illustrated version of what this text basically says, which is basically because the doctors either could not or would not prescribe the right medication. They prescribed, like I said, over 20. I got really frustrated because the longer we couldn't find the right medication, the longer I was on prednisone and the longer those effects started to really wear down my body. And we couldn't reduce the prednisone because I would go back into severe pain. Just wasn't an option. So I got stuck asking doctors for this class of medication that's called a biologic that does alter your immune system, but it's a radical anti-inflammatory, like across the board. And, they're called black box medications. They have serious side effects. It could cause things like leukemia, and you could get a serious infection. You could die. So, yeah. But it's not just the doctors not wanting that liability. Insurance only approves these biologics for a very few types of conditions, like arthritis and sometimes ulcerative colitis. And with rare illnesses like mine that don't make the list, when insurance doesn't approve a medication, a doctor cannot prescribe it. There are not other options. Also, these medications sometimes cost $5,000 a month. Who can afford that? If insurance isn't covering that, where are you getting that from? There are times where actually the drug company will cover it for you. And that's what ended up happening is when I finally found a doctor who would do it and who ended up kind of saving my life because of it. The only way we got it into my hands was because the drug company has I guess you could call it scholarship program where you can get free meds if you qualify. And I qualified, so that is why I have this medication. I'm not going to name it because then it would turn into this medication ad. I'm not being sponsored by anyone. I'm not going to name it, but it was a biologic. It is. Here it is. In the 2022-23 timeframe, it got approved for eczema, which was shocking. So I do have eczema. I've had it since childhood. It's severe. So I qualified under eczema, even though really it's treating multiple other illnesses that have gone untreated, one of them being this erythromelalgia on my face. So here's 2022, no medication. Again, these are all based on real photos. And then I start the medication. It takes about a year to get fully effective, at which time I'm also starting to taper the prednisone, still tapering the prednisone. And then this is 2023 and this is 2025. In a relatively short amount of time, I made this sort of really drastic uphill recovery after doctors were getting pretty pessimistic about it, and I felt like I was the last one believing in this thing. So yeah, within a year of starting the medication, I was able to slowly taper off the prednisone. The last few milligrams were the hardest. I was stuck in bed. Prednisone, it kind of replaces your adrenal system. So when you come off of it, your own system has to kick in, and that's what is kind of in charge of you having any kind of energy. I was actually so tired that the only solution if your system can't recover is to go back on a low dose of prednisone. And I was like, I'm absolutely not doing that. I'll just deal with this. So I fought to get out of bed for months, and now thank God it's better. So as I recovered, I wasn't in pain anymore. So I remembered that I actually had hobbies. I learned new things, new skills, new talents that I wasn't able to do when I was in all that disabling pain. Learned to play guitar. I composed my own songs. I have samples of the songs down here. You can actually hear, I have a fan in the background blowing on me because anything can cause a flare. I learned to knit and crochet. I picked up my drawing and painting again. So, yeah, there's several, these are all my own songs. It's just not something I could do when I was in horrible pain. Anyway, I'm not going to play all of them, but it's kind of fun to hear my own music and look at also my own kind of portfolio of what I could do when I wasn't suffering. It's just this visual, visceral understanding of what pain takes from you. So these are all my own crochet projects. This is an illustration of me crocheting with the cat. And then some of my artwork down here, and the background is my artwork as well. We'll see what goes about of them. Anyhow, yeah, it's important to me to, like, up until now, the site has been pretty structured and angular, and all these square blocks and this kind of square maze line leading you through to this recovery. And then once the recovery happens, it's like everything kind of blooms. There's color. The layout is like got these circular elements. It literally looks like it's blooming, and that's kind of what it felt like, coming out of this sort of dark hole of being in pain all the time. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that life is fun. So amazingly and really importantly, this medication also, the same medication, began to heal other unresolved health conditions. So this is just a brief kind of visual. Again, these are from real photographs, and I really didn't want to show my real gross foot. So here's a gross illustration of my foot. But all these were from allergic reactions. In 2008, I had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic called Bactrim. It's a sulfa antibiotic. This is a class of drug that people are commonly allergic to, and it's genetic. So I didn't realize that it was a sulfa drug, and I didn't realize that my mom is allergic to sulfa drugs, and apparently so am I. So yeah, when this happened with my ear, I looked back at how interstitial cystitis had started for me all those years ago, and it was within hours of taking Bactrim. and the condition just wouldn't resolve for more than 10 years. It's very painful. It feels like a UTI. It's hard to talk about. It's a bladder pain, and sometimes vaginal pain. And it's, I did talk about this. This was what I talked about in my first round of sharing this publicly. And to be honest, it was way harder than talking about my ear and face. So in a lot of ways, as just horrible as this has been, first of all, going through this with my ear, which was the same pattern, I guess I'll just finish with the pattern, like several times in my life, the same pattern has occurred. Allergic reaction triggers an infection, which causes this longer term inflammatory condition. So I had an allergic reaction to the lining of a pair of shoes that had worn through, and it caused eczema, which is this rash that I'm on this medication for. But then once the eczema had resolved, my feet continued to be red and hot and throbbing, just like on my face. And so that's how they actually diagnosed me. Erythromelalgia is most often in your hands and feet. So I didn't know what it was at the time. I just thought it was infected forever. But it wasn't. It was erythromelalgia in my feet that was the precursor to the allergic reaction to the ear piercing, triggering the infection that then went away, but left the hot throbbing sensation on my ear and face that, I don't know, I guess it's the most severe, even though the interstitial cystitis went on much longer. And in terms of pain level, I just want to tell you, of everything I've been through, like bone marrow biopsies, surgeries, this horrific pain, nothing is as bad as interstitial cystitis. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that is horrifying to me, and is, again, the topic of another video. So anyways, I realized from this incident that there was a pattern had emerged. Because of the pattern, we were able to find this medication that resolved all the things, which is amazing because nothing had worked for interstitial cystitis. No one was treating it, and I would never have qualified to be on a medication like this except because of this incident. So if you're looking at it from a cosmic perspective, this is actually a very positive thing. It's like a miracle. And that's part of my message. We think things like this are the worst, and they are, but they're also not. And we don't have a good understanding of why things happen and what they're for. So again, topic of another video. So I'd had the interstitial cystitis for more than 10 years, but finally this medication, this is how old I was, much younger when it started. But finally I had this relief. So here's this really cool flapping butterfly thing that Wix had in their little library. So it's cool because when you scroll, it kind of comes out of my forehead. So this is like AI's interpretation of what I look like now, with different color hair and the hat and the face that's a little thinner. And what I realized from this, the butterfly transformation of the whole thing is spiritual. We live in a society where pain is always something we avoid. So instead of looking at it and dealing with it, we blame either ourselves or other people. And when we blame someone or something, you have to make that person an object upon which to place that blame. So you literally objectify people when you blame them. And this is especially important with women because, first of all, since the time of Adam and Eve, women have been blamed for pain. I mean, Eve was blamed for the fall of man, for being kicked out of the Garden of Eden and experiencing all that pain afterwards. And Adam didn't have the tools, so it's just like, Eve, this is your fault. Which is cute in the myth, not really, but what's even worse is that when we learn to objectify women, that actually is the origination of rape and, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this word on YouTube, but sex violence. So, actually the origin of sex violence is our relationship with pain. and it's at the root of how we function in society. We live in what's called scapegoat society, where basically when something goes wrong, someone has to be blamed, and they become the scapegoat, and they're objectified. And so what started with women, what feminists commonly call the pattern of oppression, is blame, is objectifying someone. And when you do that, you are able to then place them into a hierarchy of better or worse. So you objectify a group of people, a race, you blame them for something. Now you can make that race lower than you in a hierarchy, instead of being an equal, instead of realizing that pain is actually an eraser. When pain is severe, it just takes away everything. It takes away your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your control over your body, your sense of having a body, until you just have this awareness of you're in pain and you're breathing and you're conscious. But if pain is really that bad, your consciousness can be taken from you, your eyesight, your breathing, all of that can go, and you are still aware of it. If you really examine this, you are aware of all of those things. And in order to be aware of them, you have to be something else than them. Not another object, but the one behind all the objects who sees. You're the seer, the silent knower, the one that you cannot see, but that you see from. That is the source of consciousness itself. And that is who you really are. It is where you really look from. And you've never not been that. You've never not been looking from there. It's just that we get caught up in the layers and think we are those things. But when we cross over, when we pass away, when we leave our bodies, we don't die. We survive the loss of consciousness. And that should give you quite a different perspective on both pain and death and life. And that's why there's a butterfly here, because it's beautiful and comforting and wonderful. And that is the gold lining of being in pain like this. So it's also the transformation of society. This has social and political ramifications. It is deeply feminist, but also we find that feminism and spiritual awakening actually are not separate. And in fact, if your spiritual awakening is not feminist, if you don't realize that we need to rewire our relationship with pain and stop blaming women, then it is not a full spiritual awakening. It ignores why women's power has been oppressed and suppressed on this planet. This is the source of what oppression is how women are treated. And the source of how women are treated is our relationship to pain. So the insights you find in pain, this eraser, this tool for what pain is extraordinarily important. A world without blame is a world without objectification, free of violence against women, and therefore violence against all of humanity. Rather than being objects, we realize that we are equal as the source of consciousness itself. Even though our expressions and form might not be necessarily equal, they're all different and beautiful and unique, and the universe has made space for everyone to be as they are. We actually all fit into this big picture like puzzle pieces, designed to be in this system together in kind of a circular model where no one is necessarily better or worse than the other. And that's what women do. They form circular societies where everyone is valued and no one is thrown away or better or worse than the other. And that is part of this, what I have to offer. This book, The Hidden Value of Not Knowing, which is my book, was written before the incident with the ear piercing, before erythromelalgia. So this is a memoir about my experience with interstitial cystitis, which was actually worse pain, like I said, than erythromelalgia. And it's still relevant. It's still very relevant. It may not have all of the feminist insights of my later understanding, but this is the seed of everything. It goes through what pain really is, what spiritual insight you find in pain, how you find that. And it is the toolbox for precisely what I just said. This is how you rewire your relationship to pain right here. This is the most important thing I've ever written. It's the most important thing in my entire life. If I had one thing to say before I die, it's this. I take it very seriously. And in order to share this book, it's just a fun story, I actually lived in a tent outside of my mom's apartment, like on the concrete patio, because she didn't have she didn't have a room for me, and I couldn't afford my apartment anymore if I was going to use my savings to share this book. So I actually was out there, and a coyote ran through the tent, and that was the end of that. I ended up on the couch for like a really long time, for like a year. It was very uncomfortable. So I've put in, that's not the only sacrifice I've gone through to share this. I'm not living in a tent right now, but it's extremely important to me. And I find it to be extremely important for society. So this, I do have links to it here. It's on Amazon. I did do an audiobook. And like I said, because the feminist insights of how changing our relationship to pain would actually end rape on this planet are not in there, I'm still writing. So this is my blog. This is a soft launch of my website. It's not really ready. So I have some posts that are in the works that I'll say coming soon, because they're not, I didn't actually know I was going to be even making a website until like last week. So this is going to kind of be like a slow rollout. But basically the blog is sort of like, did anyone ever tell you that spirituality and feminism aren't different? Like, what if they're the same exact thing? And we don't have a real spiritual awakening without feminism. And feminism doesn't really make much sense without spiritual truth. So, for example, you realize, you look inside yourself when you're in pain, you find the source of consciousness, and you realize that that same source is in every single person you meet and every living being that you encounter, including animals and trees, and basically the source of all matter in the world and the universe. And that everything is literally one, not just that we're all connected, it's literally one. You are looking at yourself all the time. And yourself is made of love. The universe wants you to be happy. It wants you to be healthy. And all these blocks we put in the way, these ego blocks, the mind and blaming people, they're illusions. So if you realize you're equal to everyone else, you're actually one, that would change how you relate to someone. I mean, that is feminist. I mean, that is the absolute equality of men and women, the absolute equality of different races. There's a lot caught up in here. So, no, I don't think feminism makes sense without spiritual truth. Otherwise, it's just another cause. And it's not actually just another cause. It's the last cause. The one that humanity thinks is the least important, and the lowest is the most important. And it's just so funny how the universe works that way. It's just so interesting. So I did include my artwork. I'm now calling it my award-winning artwork because it did win awards. This lovely lady over here won an award on Friday. She is Defiance. She's the youngest in the series. It's called the Soul Mandala series. They all have mandalas on their foreheads. Just because I don't know if people, they're not just portraits of women. These are enlightened women. And again, a whole other video topic, but they're deeply feminist. We commonly put gurus on a pedestal, but rarely are those gurus women. All of these women's eyes are very important. They're the eyes of someone who's awake, and they have a different quality than the eyes of someone who's in fear, rage, hate. You won't find that in these women's eyes. And if you look in them, you're actually looking at a pure reflection of yourself, like different facets of a diamond. And the first one I did was wisdom. I just loved painting her wrinkles. I just in general loved painting the wrinkles, and wrinkles aren't something that society finds acceptable from women. Again, a whole other topic of another video. But there's all different races of women here, as different ages, more in the works. They all say out of stock, which is the only thing that the website would let me say. It's supposed to say coming soon, really. That they're prints of the paintings. I don't like to part with my originals, so they are going to be prints on canvas for sale, and also like smaller prints like posters. And I just haven't finished working that out. There's a couple of websites that do that on demand that I don't really want to have the inventory and do it myself. I don't have the space to have that many large canvases. They're pretty large, so. Anyway, it's also kind of a portfolio. The idea of a guru portrait is to like have that reminder and that look of presence with you as a tool for your own awakening. Sometimes people carry around little photos in their, like in their wallet. Sometimes people like have them on their wall. And these women don't actually exist. They're not real. I had AI create them so I wouldn't have to deal with a copyright issue. And also because it's hard to find this look, I had to really describe the look I wanted because you can't find it online. It just is not a common look, except if you find pictures of male gurus. And the whole point of this is I created female gurus, so they are real in a sense. Now that they are painted and they exist, they've been glorified. You respond to them as if they're real. Their look is certainly real. They're sort of like a transmission. So I'm happy with my ladies. I'm happy they're online, and soon they will be available for purchase. And then there's a stream of videos that are on YouTube but could also be viewed on the site. And I'm probably not going to put the blog on Facebook. I'm going to talk about this in another video. I'm just not a huge fan of social media. So that is the site. That was kind of a long walkthrough, but I really wanted to show my story. And yeah, right now it's sort of still being tested across different platforms. I'm testing it on Android and Apple and Chrome browsers and Safari browsers and mobile and just everything. So since it's Wix, it should hold together pretty well, but there's some kinks that I have to work out. But it is live, and it is a good thing to show someone if someone wanted to know more about me and my story. Meet Sruti. Here you go. Hopefully this is a great way to tell the story in a kind of a fun, more concise way than this video. It probably won't take them 40 minutes to get through it. Anyway, thanks for watching with me, and I'll talk to you soon.